I'm Katie Richardson, Vice President of Clinician Relations for AngelMD, and I want to welcome everyone this evening for joining us for our second pitch night. And tonight we're going to be focusing on companies in the field of radiology. And just so you all know, some of these are going to be more interventional radiology type companies, and some of these are going to be more diagnostic radiology type companies. So we're super excited to have everyone here. I'm going to go through a little bit of background and information around pitch night, and then we will get started with our companies who are here to pitch. And I'm super excited for you guys to get to know them. So Pitch Club this evening is sponsored by Halo Creative Labs. They are a full stack creative agency. You can get to them either through the AngelMD website, or you can go to halocreativelabs.com. But big thanks to Halo Creative Labs for sponsoring our night tonight. So what is pitch night? Pitch night is casual. Pitch night is fun. We're pitching for entertainment. These companies want feedback. They want to practice. They want to get the word out about their company and their technology to clinicians everywhere. So again, we're excited to see so many people have joined us this evening. This is not about investment. We will send some follow-up information that talks a little bit about the company, and that'll be within the next couple days, so watch out for that. The other thing I'd like to just add is these companies have not been vetted by AngelMD, and they're in various stages. So we have some very early companies, we have some more mature companies, and again, I think you'll find them all very interesting today. So I want to introduce our AngelMD team that's here with us today as well. We have Tobin Arthur, who is our founder and executive chairman. We have Lisa Taylor, who is our co-CEO of investments. We have Jennifer Arthur, also a co-CEO of membership. We do not have Mike Szymanski yet, but hopefully he's coming soon. He heads up our financial operations. And we have Dr. Mark Froimson, who is our Chief Medical Officer. So super excited about those things as well. So we'll go ahead and get started without further delay. I want to try two things before we jump into pitches. I've seen a couple of people do this already, but we're going to practice the chat function because that's the way we would love for you to put any questions that you have for the startups through the chat function. So tell us who you are, tell us your specialty, and tell us where you're from, where you're joining us from. I saw Mark Fine says, greetings from Camano Island, Washington. And we have Dr. Joe Macaluso as well. Roy Wallen, entrepreneur from Brookline, New Hampshire. Super exciting. Oh, and Mark, of course, our CMO and orthopedist as well. Oh my gosh, here they come. All right. They're going way too quickly. Thank you so much for participating. Pharma Sentinel in England. Great to see you, Bob. All right, super exciting. A lot of people I've actually talked to in the last week, which is awesome. All right, so the other thing we're gonna do is a little poll. So one of the things that we enjoy doing is kind of gathering data. And this is just a fun poll. We want to know what you guys are seeing, what you're thinking, what you're predicting for the coming future. So go ahead and take a moment to answer questions in poll number 1. So without further ado, I think we should go ahead and jump in. Thank you all for saying hello in the chat. Thank you all for answering our polling questions. We're again excited to have you here. We are going to start with Dr. Benjamin Merowitz of Agile Devices.
Hello, everyone. So, Katie, I just think if you can enable screen sharing.
Yep, hold on one second.
Sorry about that.
There you go. You should be able to do it.
All right. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. So my name is Ben Marowitz. I'm CEO and co-founder of Agile Devices, and we are developing catheter deflection technologies for better patient outcomes. So just by way of background for the non-radiologists out there, microcatheters are long, skinny tubes that interventional radiologists and others use to access and navigate the blood vessels around the body for both diagnostic and therapeutic reasons. It's a minimally invasive way to reach basically any corner or nook or cranny of the body, anywhere the blood vessels go. And they're used in procedures, looking at conditions and pathologies ranging from bleeds to clots, aneurysms, tumors, and much, much more. Now, the way things work today is interventional radiologists typically rely on guide wires to basically go through the microcatheter and out the front, and then navigate with a pre-shaped tip for both the guide wire and the microcatheter to get into the turns when vessel branches, when they need to get into vessel branches. And when they have difficulty doing so, they typically need to either change out the guide wire or the microcatheter to have a tip shape that matches the turn that they need to make. Sometimes they're able to steam shape it, but in many cases they're just replacing. And many times that leads to many exchanges, which is really a problem because it wastes time. It obviously increases the cost both directly for equipment costs, but also on the basis of procedure time, and also more patient risk, especially in emergent procedures, but also in non-emergent procedures for both the operator and the patient. And this is not some sort of niche issue, right? This is, in many cases, or many conversations with IRs, the most important drawback is this lack of active tip control, either when you have multiple targets in one procedure or when you know you're going to enter tortuous anatomy, which in combination represent over 70% of cases based on a survey of over 50 interventional radiologists in the US. Now, Agile Devices is commercializing a solution to this problem, specifically a microcatheter whose tip can deflect bidirectionally up to 180 degrees and rotate 360 degrees. And basically that means that the interventional radiologist only has to have one microcatheter and that there won't need to be exchanges for the microcatheter or the guide wire, since you can use the tip of the microcatheter to get into whatever vessel branch you're trying to get into and change the shape, as you can see the image on the bottom of this screen. You can use the thumb pad as you see the mock-up of the handle of the device. You go click, click, click up or click, click, click down, and the tip of the device will go and have an auto lock with quick release, so it can be operated with one hand. It's based on a novel coaxial technology without the use of pull wires, which is what every prior attempt at microcatheter steerability has used, and what has led to a lot of the limitations and lack of traction for every prior attempt. It's a patent-protected technology. It's standard with all other embolic materials and other things you might want to deliver through it, as well as guide cats and sheets that you might, and introducers that you might use with other microcatheters. And other items to mention here besides the problem and the solution, so other features of our venture, first of all, the market size is quite large. Catheter market is about 30 billion in 2019. And microcatheters represent, just one piece of that, representing about $500 million in market size. But there are many more segments within the catheter market that would benefit from the deflection technology that we use.
Let's move on to our second presentation, and then we'll come back to Ben. I think that's probably the best thing to do at this point. So next we have up Avani Patel. So Avani is the CEO and founder of a company called Bookmammogram, and she is going to give her pitch right now.
There you go. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Katie and AngelMD, for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here. Nice to meet you, everyone. Hello, my name is Avani Patel. I'm founder and CEO of Bookmammogram.org. We all at some point in our lives will know one of these 8 women. 1 out of 8 women develop breast cancer, and 1 out of 39 actually die from it. We know that mammograms are the most effective screening tool out there, yet why is it that there's still only about an average rate of annual screening mammograms? Well, perhaps because it's a huge multi-step cumbersome process. So there's still this lack of awareness that under the Affordable Care Act, insurance is required to pay in full for annual screening mammograms. Then there's this hurdle of getting a referral. Women barely have time to go get the actual screening mammograms, let alone have time to go get a referral in order to just get the mammogram. This is actually a huge misconception in that a referral is actually not required to get your screening mammogram, and this step can be skipped altogether. But once a woman does get the referral, she is almost always usually limited to the imaging centers provided by the referral and has to follow a very old school process of multiple manual phone calls, often leading to a game of phone tag. Then when she finally gets her screening mammogram, she has to go back to the referring physician for the results. This is just a very unnecessary hindrance, not just for women, but a huge opportunity loss for imaging centers. So currently, imaging centers on average do about 4,000 annual screening mammograms. At a 50% rate, this means that they have the potential to double that revenue stream. And then there's also multiple buckets of downstream revenue that are being lost. So 10% of annual screening mammograms result in a callback for diagnostic mammogram. 10% of those get called back for biopsies, and about 20% of those come out to be cancers. In total, at the very minimum, each imaging center is losing over $500,000 in annual reoccurring revenue. So wouldn't it be great if there was just a simple online solution to book your annual mammogram, just like OpenTable for dinner reservations? Well, now there is. So all the user needs to do is input 4 simple attributes: the insurance they have, the type of screening they want, their city, and the date. Pops up availability across multiple imaging centers. They select the best one. They fill out an online intake form, which is customized to that specific imaging center. This is to eliminate any manual paperwork and, God forbid, having to fax anything. And so then the user in the imaging center can manage the appointments through the site. The imaging center will still initially keep their scheduling system, so this will simply be an additional tool that they can use. I'm building a technology platform to simplify the process of getting your screening mammogram that typically currently takes at minimum days to a matter of minutes. Imaging centers are also are also very heavily dependent on referrals for their business, and also have a very labor-intensive phone call scheduling. By utilizing this platform, they are adding an additional marketing channel going direct to the patient. And also utilizing this platform is completely risk-free. So they only pay for the leads that are generated, which will allow them to scale back on their current marketing budget because this is a much more effective way to market. And at the very least, they're providing their patients an additional tool to differentiate themselves that will only enhance the patient experience. So how exactly am I going to generate these leads? Well, it's going to be a multifaceted approach, utilizing targeted digital ads as well as social platforms, sponsoring breast cancer awareness events, educating referring physicians as well as women that this is truly your one-stop shop. All you need to do is just go onto this website. Now there's no excuses, right? You have to get your mammogram done. And also partnering with breast cancer organizations. At the end of the day, we all have the common goal and mission of encouraging women to get their annual screening mammograms. I'm doing it by building an online tool to make that process more convenient and efficient for everyone. But first, I need launch partners. So I'm looking for breast imaging centers to partner and to test with. It will be highly advantageous for them to be my launch partner because all of my efforts and marketing budget will go solely towards them. And it will be a customized, tailored solution as I work with them to see how I can optimize. There will be no cost, no risk, and no commitment. If interested, please let me know. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Avani. Thank you so much for presenting this. I would love to see if anyone would like to put in the chat, do we have any, well, first, do we have any radiologists here that are specifically breast imaging radiologists. And then the other thing I would like to know is, are any of you owners of imaging centers? And if you have questions, again, please put them in the chat. Avani, we have one question about your marketing strategy. Can you clarify that a little bit, as well as what do you mean by a launch partner?
Sure. So launch partner means I need the first imaging center to sign up with me, right? To be part of my platform. And with this launch partner, I'll work with them to optimize how I'm going to be generating leads. And so it's a risk-free, trial-free period initially. And so they'll be getting free leads. But I need, in order to get started, I need to have an imaging center signed on.
So you're looking for people to help you, I'm guessing, kind of proof of concept and get things up and running.
Sure, so I'm having my prototype built, and basically, I'm an aggregator of breast imaging centers, right? To create this one universal platform where all women can go. So I need to have imaging centers to sign up on my platform. And it's always the hardest to get that first one. And so that's what I'm looking for is that first one.
All right, so a couple of other questions that have come through. One, who conveys the results of the mammogram to the patients? And do you have any integrations with existing operating systems?
Those are both great questions. I'll answer the first one. So I believe the current process is that if there is no referral, then the radiologist is the one that conveys the results to the patient. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's from my understanding. If there's no referring physician. If they do have a referring physician, then they're more than welcome to input that into the platform as well. So there's no difference in how that imaging center accepts the appointments. This is just an online platform to streamline that process.
All right, so I have all the rest of the questions written down. We're gonna move on to our next presenter, and we'll come back to some of these at the end. And Alan, I apologize, we'll get to your question as well. Avani, thank you so much for presenting today. Go ahead and stop sharing your screen. Yes. I'm gonna come back for a moment because I think we got Benjamin back on the call. And maybe we should just move on to some questions for Agile devices. Ben, can you unmute? Are you able to answer some questions for us?
Yes, so sorry about the technology issues.
That's okay. So there were a couple questions that I would love to get answered. What are the lifespan of the tips, and are they sterilizable? And then also there was a question about size of the catheters. So what French are they gonna come in, as well as your FDA status?
Sure, yeah. So these are single-use devices, and the tips are already built into the full device itself. It's an 021, 21 thousandths inner diameter, and a 38.5 thousandths outer diameter maximum. That's just our first product, the Angler, as we're calling it. We are looking to submit our 510K Class 2 FDA submission this December, right? So we would, statutorily, we would expect a response within 90 days, but given COVID and the holidays, we're building in some extra time. So hopefully sometime in the second quarter of next year, we should have a clearance for our first device.
And actually, one other question that I forgot. Do you have any interest from strategics? So partners that you might, or people that might be interested in helping you with your exit strategy?
Yes, absolutely. So for the last 3 years, we've been speaking consistently with the potential acquirers in our space, right? So obviously the major incumbents, as well as some other adjacent technology providers of embolic particles, guide caths, sheaths, other equipment, but companies that might not have a microcatheter in their portfolio who've been very interested in getting in with a differentiated mousetrap, so to speak. So yeah, so pretty much all of them we're speaking to to one degree or another. And, you know, some of them are more equipped to make a deal prior to clearance, and others prefer to wait till after clearance. So we're looking to get through clearance and through our limited market evaluation before doing a strategic partnership.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Sorry to you and to everybody else that we had some technical difficulties there, but again, we'll get some the remainder of Ben's slides out to everybody after the event. And we will have more time for questions at the end. I know there was one additional question, so we can come back to that as well. But we're going to move on to our next presenter. So we have Greg Bellinger with us from Deep Look Medical, and we also, have Steve Schwadron, who's with us as well from Deep Look, but Greg's gonna be our presenter tonight. So go ahead and share your slides, and we look forward to learning about your company. Greg.
All right, thank you, Katie. You can hear me and see my screen, I'm assuming?
We can.
All right, great. Well, thank you, first of all. It's a thrill to be able to do this tonight, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Katie, and appreciate everyone attending. So we are a software company. We were founded just in 2018, and we're currently raising some convertible debt. And what we have is an image analysis software, and I'm really thrilled to tell you, you're the first group we're going to be able to tell we just got our patent. So we got a patent in a little less than a year, and for software patents, that's pretty quick. Basically, the novelty of the product and the novelty of the algorithm showed there really was no prior art that we were going to bump into. And that novelty I'm going to lean on a little bit as I talk to you. So we have a market-ready product, and we're awaiting now FDA clearance. We've filed our submission. We've been through an information meeting with the FDA, and we've also handled questions since our submission. We're expecting and are hopeful that we'll get it in October, which means we'll be going to market right after that because we're already integrated in a lot of, we already know how to integrate into different readers, and we've already begun commercial integration with 2 of them. What is it that we do? Well, we solve a discrete problem. What we are able to do is provide precise and automated measurement of tumors. And how we can do that derives from the core technology. That core technology, which I'll show you an illustration of in a moment, allows us to see data that's hidden beyond the range of human vision. And that allows us, interestingly enough, to precisely measure the morphology and the delineated edges of a tumor or a mass that you have identified on a medical image. It also has diagnostic and other kinds of medical decision support implications that we've focused on initially and that we will continue to bring out. But we decided to focus primarily on measurement because of the immediate patent availability of going to market. So let's stop for a second, just talk about the patent, just so you understand what this technology is. We come from a different industry. We're not prior to this, we were in the image analysis industry in a variety of ways. We were looking at trademarks, for example, and trademark infringement. And so what we've done is we've taken shape recognition technology, combined it with image analysis technology, and what we look at is the values that are buried in the digital image as a result of X-ray attenuation. And that's what the patent covers. We're now seeking derivative patent coverage to apply the same principles to ultrasound and ultimately to MRI. We also are working in the area of mammography first. And the reason is we just began there in terms of testing the algorithm on mammograms. And we focused on a problem, which 40% of women have dense breast tissue naturally, and this can obscure or hide cancers and make it hard to see masses and delineate and measure them. And when we realized that we had an effect of kind of digital magnifying glass that would cut through the density and show you the underlying morphology, we focused on mammography. To be honest with you, we put measurement as an added feature in the morphology algorithms. but we found out that measurement was a key consideration, and we could get through the FDA and get early adoption by focusing on measurement, and then come back with longer studies that we'll need to talk about the diagnostic and decision support implication of the fact that we can show the internal morphology of the lesion, not just its delineated edges. That means that in terms of a strategy, we decided, and partly, frankly, this is because we were in the middle of a study with the American College of Radiology, and it was suspended because of the coronavirus. So we couldn't have radiologists flying in from around the country to test the morphological and decision support components of the software. But we knew the measurement worked. We had already tested that extensively on 3,000 images, and we're using it to develop the protocol for the study. And so we pivoted, frankly, and made that the product that we're going to market with. It also meant a lower bar, a lower regulatory bar with the FDA, because it's embedded in existing 510K devices. So we're going to begin with mammography and then sequence our way into CT scans of different body sections, and then ultimately ultrasound. But I want to underscore this. Measurement is our kind of Trojan horse into the marketplace. We are going to price it in simple software licensing that can be either monthly or annual subscription. It can be sold as an enterprise unit with 1,000 units at a time or 200 units for a hospital system. But it's a point of entry. It's a Trojan horse, if you will, into the space using existing vendors. We're not selling directly to the hospitals. We'll be selling to the IT vendors who service the hospitals and are already there. And then that will allow us to leverage the same derivative technology, which will then already be installed for morphology matching, which is the database we have in the cloud that helps to distinguish malignant from benign, monitoring tumors that are for therapeutic reaction, so you can watch and see whether in fact a drug and chemo regimen is working because our measurement is so precise. And then buried in the data that we can see is many other potential implications, like linking the data pattern and the shape recognition to genomic data, for example. And that's our long-term structured report play, but it all begins with measurement. So first we'll start that, and we'll start that this fall as soon as the 510K is approved. And we've already integrated with one mammography reader, and we're now integrating with one CAT scan reader. With that, I'll stop, Katie, and see if we have any immediate questions.
So we do have a question, or a couple of questions already. We had it, but our second question is, why are you starting? I know we talked about starting with mammogram and then moving to CT. And the question is, why CT as opposed to MRI, since this is essentially soft tissue evaluation?
Okay. And I may understand the first question, but we'll see if Mark can clarify it.
Okay.
First of all, why did we begin with mammograms? To be perfectly frank, when we came from a different industry and we looked at medical imaging, and the first image that came up that we thought about applying our technology to was mammograms. And I'd like to say we had a more reasoned judgment there, but that is the truth. And we started working with mammograms, and we got a data set of 3,000, and that's how we started. Also, remember, the patent that we have right now is it's for medical images derived from X-ray attenuation. So other kinds of imaging, like ultrasound, for example, is going to require derivative patent claims. Because the software is embedded in existing, it's going to be in major players embedded in their software. We need the IP protection prior to integration with the different companies. So since we started in mammo, we would work first with mammo readers, and then we moved to CT scans because we have inroads into those, and because it's X-ray attenuation, we already had the patent coverage. Eventually, ultrasound and other kinds of imaging, soft tissue and the like, will move forward in. And that may be alluded to in the previous question, which I'll stop and see if there's been a clarification before I launch into that, Katie.
Sure. Well, Mark said essentially you're claiming to do something people have been unable to do for 30 years. Nobel Prize. But let me move on to another question. There's a couple of questions around validation. One, has there been any prospective validation of the accuracy of the measurements? And the second one essentially was around how extensively have you compared the AI computer visioning cases with pathology proven cases? So it's really all about validation here. So tell us a little bit about that.
Excellent two-part question, but you know it pivots around the same issue. So what are we measuring? How accurate do we think that measuring matches the actual reality of the tissue? And then how do you compare that? But when we step back, and we all know this, when you actually take the path report and you look at the volumetric estimates versus the path report, there's always a discrepancy and variability there, because you've got, in the case of breast imaging, for example, you're looking at an image and you're looking at an area of density. What you see on the one on the far left right here on this slide right here, this is a biopsied and proven cancer case in which you've got the software indicates by the darker the color, the greater the density, and then the perimeters, and then automatically measures it. But there's three very important things about this. One is every one of these cases was ground truth proven. In other words, the software is not a detection device, it's an ROI device. You've identified an area of interest and it will show you what's there. Can we say that the lesion is exactly that shape and size when you take it, and if you could abstract it and remove it from the actual surrounding tissue? Well, of course not, for two reasons. One, it's under compression, and two, there's a variability in what actually gets removed. And what it is a very reliable visualization of the shape as best as can be seen by the values in those pixels, because the human eye cannot see. Today's mammogram, for example, has shades of gray that are beyond the ability of the human eye to distinguish, but they have numerical value. What we do is accentuate those with color and then put shape recognition algorithms that look for the morphological connections. And that's not edge detection. Those of you who know software, we do not use traditional edge detection. And that's why we got a patent. We use a very novel form of shape recognition that's derivative of some other applications in another industry. Now, most important point, we're not saying that this is the absolute, if you could tell you the exact size of this tumor, what we're saying is we will precisely measure this image and its delineated borders the same every time, whereas human beings will make a variable mistake up to 30%. And secondly, it will do the exact same thing and it will look at the same area in a retrospective comparison and give you apples to apples comparison. And that allows you to determine whether you have morphological change in one direction versus another. But it's almost a little bit of a misnomer to say this morphological shape and measurement has to be precisely what is the reality, because every study will indicate you can't get the exact reality because of compression and all kinds of other aspects of it. Now, with that said, one last thing. This is critically important, the difference between AI applications we compete with. We're not replacing the radiologist. We're not telling the radiologist that they can't make an adjustment. In fact, the software, one click, will make an adjustment on these measurements. In other words, it's a precision tool that can be modified by the radiologist if they clearly see a delineation that they don't agree with the algorithm. But what you've taken away is the monotony and fatigue of the initial measurement. You've gotten delineated borders, easy to see, easy to compare in consultation, but you can disagree with the algorithm, and we're not making a prognosis right now of diagnostic, it's malignant, it's benign. We actually think we can do that, but we're doing that in later versions.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to cut you off there.
Okay.
We have another question, but we'll hold it
right.
to the end. I love it makes me think of Athena Health for a while had #save the doctors. So thanks for, keeping the radiologists in business, right? All right, so we're gonna, If you haven't already, please take time to rate and review Deep Look and Greg's presentation, as well as Avani's and Benjamin's, who came before. That link again is in the chat. We really want to be able to give that feedback to these CEOs and founders of these companies, because it's super important.
So I'm assuming you can see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank
Perfect.
you.
So hello everyone, and thanks for having us. As Katie mentioned, the name of the company is Vasonosis. We are AI-powered diagnostic and surgical navigation software for cerebrovascular diseases. We just heard from Greg and all the challenges that radiology is going through to accurately measure different abnormalities using the limited capabilities that the PAC system provides to them. We are somehow close to what Greg does. So currently, the diagnostic and surgical planning for cerebrovascular disease are manual and time-consuming. Based on Brain Aneurysm Foundation research, 1 in 50 Americans is harboring at least one ruptured brain aneurysm. As probably most of you know already better than us as engineers, if a patient experiences rupture for a brain aneurysm, 50% don't even make it to the hospital. When it comes to the treatment of this patient, today we have more than 23 unique devices that they all been FDA cleared to treat this kind of abnormalities. However, on average, 1 in 4 of these surgeries are unsuccessful. By unsuccessful, I mean that the patient has to come back in about 6 months. When they come back for a follow-up, and aneurysm is still alive, therefore the surgeon has to do a correction operation. Based on these observations that I did in my PhD and postdoc that researching brain aneurysm, I started Vasonosis in 2019. Vasonosis offers an AI diagnostic and surgical navigation software solution to help detect, manage, and provide guided therapy for this kind of diseases. What does it mean? We are building a cloud-based software platform that receives MR angio or CT angio. It can find these abnormalities. As I mentioned, currently we are focusing on brain aneurysm. It can find brain aneurysm, perform a risk assessment, and then if the surgeon approves or asks for the further simulation, we can find the best device based on the anatomy of the patient, as well as how the device fits and changes the blood patterns. So to do so, we have a series of different solutions. We started with VG Recon. VG Recon was our first solution that we released in May this year. VG Recon is basically advanced AI-powered 3D reconstruction software specifically for MRA images. This is a cloud, as I mentioned, this is a cloud-based software. It means that the hospital or the research group that are using it right now, they don't need to invest any hardware. All the hardware side, all the calculation happens on the server side, so they don't need any advanced hardware. So VG Recon right now being used at UCSF as a research software to visualize MR angios and help them to measure different arteries and so on. Next, we are building our detection model, and that is again based on detection of brain aneurysm using MR angios. Currently, we have IRB approval from Medical College of Wisconsin and UMass Memorial Healthcare to perform a validation trial at these 2 sites to show our sensitivity and specificity and use those results for our first FDA filing. Q1 next year, we will be releasing our surgical navigation. For surgical navigation, think of it as a video game for a surgeon. So in that scenario, the surgeon tells us 3 to 4 different scenarios that they are thinking that patient can use for this operation. Then our software uses the basically algorithm that we have developed to analyze those scenarios and suggest which one has a higher chance of success for that specific patient based on their unique anatomy and blood patterns. So for any software that comes to the market, especially in healthcare, we have to have a specific ROI for a hospital to make sense for them to basically buy this software or pay for it. Here we have 3 different ROIs that we're proposing to the hospitals. First of all, we're increasing the efficiency and accuracy for detection of these diseases. Second, we are potentially increasing the revenue of the hospital with better detection. It means lower misdiagnostic, and as you know, again, better than me, if these patients get diagnosed, they will be placed on watch list. Finally, the highest ROI is to optimize the margin of the operation. What does it mean is, as you probably know, the hospital gets a flat fee for these operations from the insurance company. The surgeon gets a flat fee from the hospital to perform this operation. And the hospital has a fixed margin. Now, if the surgeon goes to the operation room and tries 3 different devices before they settle with one, those devices come off the margin of the hospital. With this simulation environment we are building, when the surgeon goes to the room, they exactly know what device and which size they're going to be using. So I try to keep it short to leave room for questions. And now I'll be happy to answer if there's any questions.
All right, well, we have a couple of questions for you already. Again,
Sure.
Anyone who's viewing us, you can put your questions in the chat. So two-part question here. One, can you compare and contrast your platform against competitors such as Viz AI for aneurysm detection? And then the second part of that, can the technology be applied to CT angiogram rather than MR angiogram?
Right, great question. So I'm glad that competition came up. So on the first part, as you probably know, Viz and Rapid AI already, they are focusing on stroke detection, and their value or ROI to a hospital is they put their platform in the ER, and as soon as a head scan comes in, CT, MR, they detect the stroke in as soon as possible. Our main value comes on the treatment of this patient. So that is been found. And as you probably know, most of the aneurysm patients, they're going to be on watch list. They come back for the follow-ups. They need a comparison of the imaging. We are automating that part. So in the stroke cases, V's value is to find them really fast. We are not in the ER section. We are more like outpatient. And second part of the question, can you tell me, Katie, again?
Yes, I sure can. Can the technology be applied to CTA rather than MRA?
Yes. So we just started with MRA because of the agreement that we had with Medical College of Wisconsin. First, they gave us MRA, but 100% can be applied on CTA, and that's our plan as soon as we basically get more bandwidth to include the CTA to the platform.
Fantastic. All right, well, I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Sure.
If you can go ahead and stop sharing your
Absolutely.
screen. All right, so I'm going to go with one additional question for each startup. And Benjamin, I'm going to start with you. There was a question about, are there any of your catheters in the market or being currently tested?
So our devices are not on the market yet. We're applying for 510K FDA clearance before the end of the year, and hopefully we should have clearance by the second quarter of next year. And we would look to do a limited market evaluation at that point. We have been testing though extensively. I mean, we've done 2 animal studies and extensive peripheral vascular benchtop studies, which have all had very encouraging results and show that our device is able to get to the target typically faster than the conventional best-in-class microcatheters, and in many cases is able to get to targets that others frequently cannot get to. Very tortuous type of setups, et cetera.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Again, that's Benjamin Merowitz with Agile Technologies. All right, so we're going to move on to Avani Patel from Bookmammogram. I'm going to combine these into one question. So how do you make money? And what do you think your investor proposition is?
Sure. So how I would make money by basically charging per lead. So anytime somebody books a mammogram and actually shows up and gets their appointment or gets their screening mammogram done, there would be a transaction fee. So that's why it's risk-free, right? So if I don't deliver any leads, then there's no cost to the imaging center.
Wonderful. What do you think your value proposition is to investors?
I would say it's really just this platform, like open table, where it has many, many restaurants that are signed up. It's just one platform with all the imaging centers there. And so all the screening mammograms ideally would just go through this site. And so it's just like this one stop for mammograms.
All right. Avani Patel again with Bookmammogram. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you
And Ali, we're going to move on to you. Oh, and let me just make sure I'm in the right place. I am, I think. Okay. I'm like, where did I write your question? Okay. There was a question around how does your technology work with post-op imaging or other situations where there is distorted technology? Or sorry, distorted anatomy, not technology.
Okay, can you ask the question again?
Yes. How does your technology work for post-op imaging or other situations where there's distorted anatomy?
Honestly, we haven't done anything with post-op. It's all been on the diagnostic or screening side of mammograms and even with CTs. So I can't answer that question.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone being here tonight. I know it's a Sunday evening, taking some time out of family and personal time, but we're super excited to be here and to have everyone join us, as well as very grateful to Vasonosis, to Deep Look, to Bookmammogram, as well as Agile Technologies for their great presentations tonight. So we look forward, as Tobin said, to seeing you guys in another 2 weeks, where we will have on Sunday, August 30th, we're going to do one more Sunday evening, and then we might mix it up a little bit. But Sunday, August 30th, we're going to have urology night. So we hope everyone will return and learn a little bit about advances in technology and potentially devices and treatments in the field of urology. So on behalf of the AngelMD team tonight, I want to thank everyone, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Well done.
Thank you.